It started with little things I'd catch in the bathroom mirror. While my wife, Jessica, was brushing her teeth, her reflection would stop a half second before she did. Last night, I watched her go to bed, but as I turned off the lights, I glanced at the dresser mirror and saw her reflection still sitting up, smiling at me in the dark. My heart tried to beat its way out of my ribcage. I froze, my hand still on the light switch, my knuckles white. The darkness of the bedroom was almost absolute, save for the sliver of moonlight cutting through the blinds, catching the silver edge of the mirror frame. Her reflection's smile wasn't Jess's. It was too wide, too sharp, a predatory curve in the gloom that held no warmth. My wife, the real one, was breathing softly beside me in our bed, already drifting towards sleep, oblivious. I squeezed my eyes shut, counted to 5, and when I opened them again, the reflection was gone. The mirror showed only an empty, dark room. "You coming to bed, Alex?" Jess murmured, her voice thick with sleep. I forced a breath into my lungs. "Yeah, hon. Just thought I heard something downstairs." It was a lie, and it tasted like ash in my mouth. For the past 2 months, my life had become a series of these little lies, tiny paper cuts on the surface of our marriage. It had begun subtly. A flicker in my peripheral vision, a sense of being watched when we passed a storefront window. Then came the mirror in our bathroom. I'd be shaving, and in the reflection, I'd see Jess walk into the room behind me. She'd start her morning routine, and for a split second, her reflection's hand would move to the toothbrush a heartbeat before hers did. The first time, I wrote it off as a trick of the light, a symptom of not enough coffee. The second time, a knot of unease tightened in my gut. By the fifth time, raw, primal fear had begun to take root. Jess hadn't noticed a thing. How could she? To her, everything was normal. But I saw it. And I saw the changes in her, too. They were as subtle as the mismatched movements in the mirror. The way her laughter didn't quite reach her eyes anymore. The new, almost clinical way she'd analyze a problem at her architecture firm, where before she'd been driven by a passionate, chaotic creativity. She was a little colder, a little more distant. It was like watching the vibrant colors of a painting slowly fade to grayscale. Our friends didn't see it. My mother, who adored Jess, didn't see it. "She seems a bit stressed from work, honey," she'd said over the phone. "Make sure you're taking care of her." And I was trying. God, I was trying. I cooked her favorite meals, ran her baths, held her when she'd let me. But it felt like holding a beautiful, intricate doll instead of the woman I'd married. The warmth I'd fallen in love with, the spontaneous spark that made her her, was being banked, smothered under a layer of cool indifference. The night after the smiling reflection incident, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, listening to the steady rhythm of Jess's breathing, my back rigid. Every shadow in the room felt menacing. Every creak of the old house was the footstep of something creeping closer. I kept my eyes locked on the dresser mirror, half expecting to see that horrifying smile reappear. The next morning, I tried to bring it up, casually. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. We were in the kitchen, the smell of coffee and toast filling the air. It was a perfect picture of domesticity. "Hey, Jess," I started, my voice sounding unnaturally high. "Have you ever, seen something weird in a mirror? Like your reflection moving on its own?" She paused, her knife hovering over a piece of toast slathered with jam. She looked at me, a slight furrow in her brow. It was a look of mild concern, the kind you'd give a child who just told you there's a monster under their bed. "Moving on its own? What do you mean, Alex? I don't know, I stammered, feeling like a fool. Like a lad. Or it does something you're not doing. She put her knife down and gave me her full attention. This was the Jess I knew, the one who listened, who cared. Are you feeling okay? You've seemed on edge lately. Is everything all right at work? Work's fine. I'm fine. Just tired, I guess. Haven't been sleeping well. She came around the kitchen island and wrapped her arms around my waist, resting her head on my chest. I hugged her back, burying my face in her hair, inhaling the familiar scent of her shampoo. It was moments like these that made me doubt my own sanity. Everything felt so normal, so right. Maybe I was just stressed. Maybe I was having some kind of breakdown. But then she pulled back and looked up at me, and her eyes seemed flat. The warmth was gone again, replaced by a cool, appraising look. You should try to get more sleep, Alex. You don't want to burn out. She turned back to her toast, and the conversation was over. The wall was back up. My skin crawled. That evening, the terror escalated. Jess was working late, and I was home alone. I'd been avoiding mirrors all day, going so far as to use the tiny powder room downstairs that didn't have one. But I couldn't avoid them forever. After a few beers to steady my nerves, I decided to take a shower. I walked into our master bathroom and flicked on the light. And there it was, in the large mirror over the double vanity. Jess's reflection stood there, even though the room was empty. It wasn't a fleeting glance this time. It stood perfectly still, wearing the clothes Jess had worn to work that morning, a sharp gray pantsuit. But its expression was one of pure, undiluted malice. Its eyes, Jess's eyes, were fixed on me, burning with a cold fire. The corners of its mouth were turned down in a sneer of contempt. I stopped breathing. My world narrowed to that single, impossible image. I could hear the blood roaring in my ears. I didn't scream. The sound was lodged in my throat, a solid lump of terror. Slowly, deliberately, the reflection raised a hand. Its fingers were long and slender, just like Jess's. It pressed its palm flat against the glass from the inside, and then it did something that shattered the last remnants of my sanity. It mouthed a single word to me. A silent, desperate plea. Help. My legs gave out and I crashed to the floor, scrambling backward until my back hit the cool tile of the shower. I sat there, gasping, staring at the mirror. The reflection was gone. It was just me now, a pathetic, trembling heap on the bathroom floor, reflected back at myself. Was it a warning? A cry for help? Was it the real Jessica, trapped somewhere behind the glass, while this cold impostor wore her skin? The thought was so monstrous, so far beyond the realm of possibility, that my mind buckled under the weight of it. When Jess came home an hour later, I was still sitting on the couch in the dark, a half-empty bottle of whiskey in my hand. She flipped on the lights, her keys jingling. "Alex, what are you doing sitting in the dark?" she asked, her voice sharp with annoyance. "You scared me." I looked at her, really looked at her. Her face was a perfect mask of my wife's. The same sweep of dark hair, the same sprinkle of freckles across her nose. But the eyes were wrong. They were cold, hard windows into an empty room. "We need to talk," I said, my voice hoarse. "About what?" "You're drinking." She gestured at the bottle with a dismissive wave. "About what's happening to you, Jess." A flicker of something unreadable passed through her eyes. "I have no idea what you're talking about." Your reflection, I whispered, the words feeling insane even as I said them. It's not you. It moves on its own. It's strapped. And you've changed. You're not the woman I married. She stared at me for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she laughed. It wasn't Jess's warm, bubbling laugh. It was a cold, brittle sound that grated on my nerves. Alex, you're not making any sense. You're exhausted and you're drunk. You're starting to scare me. Maybe you should see someone. A therapist. Every word was a perfectly calculated blow, designed to make me feel unhinged, to isolate me. It was working. The thought that I was losing my mind was a seductive poison. It would be so much easier to believe that than to accept the terrifying alternative. I'm not crazy, I insisted, my voice rising with desperation. I saw it. It told me to help. Her face hardened. That's enough. I'm going to bed. We can talk about this in the morning, when you're sober and thinking clearly. She turned and walked up the stairs without another word. I was left alone in the too bright living room, the silence pressing in on me. She was pushing me away, just as I had feared. The entity, whatever it was winning. It was isolating its only threat. I knew then that I couldn't do nothing. I had to fight back, even if I didn't know how. I had to find a way to reach the real Jessica, the one who was pleading for help from behind the glass. The next few days were a living nightmare. I pretended to agree with her. I told her I was just overworked and had scheduled a doctor's appointment. I played the part of the dutiful, slightly embarrassed husband. But I was watching. I was always watching. I started researching. Late at night, huddled over my laptop, I typed in search terms that felt absurd: reflection moves on its own, doppelganger in mirror, person trapped in reflection. I waded through forums filled with ghost stories and urban legends. Most of it was unbelievable, but here and there, I found threads of similarity. Stories of malevolent entities attaching themselves to people, of mirrors as gateways. It was thin, desperate stuff, but it was all I had. The reflection, meanwhile, was getting bolder. It no longer just mimicked Jess with a slight delay. I'd see it in the polished surface of the toaster, smirking at me while Jess made breakfast. In the dark screen of the TV, I saw its face contorted in a silent scream while Jess watched a sitcom, laughing hollowly. And the warnings became more frequent. In the side view mirror of my car, as Jess got out to go to the grocery store, her reflection stayed behind, its eyes wide with terror, mouthing the words, "Don't trust her." One afternoon, I came home early. I found Jess, or the thing that looked like her, standing in front of the full-length mirror in our hallway. She wasn't looking at her reflection. She was talking to it. Her voice was low, a sibilant whisper I couldn't make out. But her reflection was answering. Its lips moved in perfect sync with a voice that was not my wife's. It was a rasping, guttural sound that made the hair on my arms stand up. They were conversing, scheming. I backed away slowly, my heart in my throat. This was it. The proof. The reflection wasn't a trapped victim. It was a conspirator. Or maybe they were two halves of the same monstrous thing. The realization hit me like a physical blow. I had been wrong. The reflection mouthing help wasn't a plea. It was a taunt. It was playing with me, enjoying my terror. It wasn't the real Jessica trapped inside. The real Jessica was being hollowed out from the inside, replaced piece by this thing. My strategy had to change. This wasn't a rescue mission. It was an exorcism. I remembered reading a fragment of folklore on one of those forums, a recurring theme in several different cultures. An entity tied to a reflection could be severed or weakened by destroying the primary mirror it first appeared in. Our bathroom mirror. It was a long shot, a desperate gamble based on internet mythology, but it was the only plan I had. That night I waited until she was asleep. Her breathing was even, but it didn't bring me comfort anymore. It felt like a performance. I slipped out of bed and crept downstairs to the garage. I found a heavy-duty crowbar from my toolbox. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely grip it. This was it. If I was wrong, if I was truly losing my mind, then I was about to destroy our bathroom and terrify my wife for no reason. I would lose her for sure, but if I was right I might get her back. I crept back up the stairs, the cold steel of the crowbar heavy in my hand. I pushed open the bathroom door. The room was dark, but the faint glow from the nightlight in the hall was enough to see the outline of the mirror. It seemed to hum with a malevolent energy, a dark portal in the wall. I took a deep breath, raised the crowbar, and swung. The sound of shattering glass was explosive in the silent house. It felt like a dam breaking. A primal scream, high and piercing, tore through the air. It wasn't my voice. It wasn't Jess's. It was something inhuman, a shriek of rage and pain that came from everywhere and nowhere at once. The light in the hallway flickered and died, plunging me into total darkness. The screaming stopped, replaced by a terrifying silence. Alex. Jessica's voice came from the bedroom, sharp with panic. What was that? What's happening? The bedroom door creaked open. Her silhouette stood in the doorway, blocking the faint moonlight. Alex, what did you do? She asked, her voice trembling. I couldn't see her face, but I could feel her eyes on me. I stood frozen in the wrecked bathroom, surrounded by shards of broken mirror, the crowbar still in my hand. Stay back, Jess, I said, my voice shaking. It's okay. I think I fixed it. She took a step into the bathroom. The nightlight from the hall across the way flickered back on, casting a weak, pulsing glow. In the fragmented pieces of the mirror scattered across the floor, I saw hundreds of reflections. And in every single shard, her reflection was smiling. The same wide, malicious smile from the dresser mirror. But Jessica, the woman standing in front of me, was not smiling. Her face was a mask of fear and confusion. Her eyes were wide, tears welling up in them. Alex, you're scaring me, she whispered. She looked like my Jess again. The coldness was gone, replaced by a vulnerability that tore at my heart. Could it be? Had it worked? Had shattering the mirror severed the connection, freeing her? The reflections in the broken pieces on the floor began to move. They weren't just smiling anymore. They were laughing, silently. 1,000 tiny, broken mouths contorting in silent, mocking glee. Jessica took another step toward me, her arms outstretched. Honey, please. Put the crowbar down. Let's just talk. I looked from her face, the face of the woman I loved, filled with fear and concern, down to the shattered floor. The 1,000 smiling demons on the floor looked back up at me. Then I looked at the one reflection I hadn't noticed before. The large, jagged piece of mirror still clinging to the wall. In it, I could see both of us. I saw myself, wild-eyed and holding a crowbar. And I saw Jessica standing behind me. But her reflection in that shard wasn't looking at me. It was looking at her. And it wasn't smiling. It was weeping. Tears streamed down its face, its expression one of utter agony and despair. Its hands were pressed against the glass from the inside, as if trying to break out. Its mouth was open in a silent scream, a desperate, final plea. My blood ran cold. The woman in front of me, the one with tears in her eyes, the one whose voice was filled with fear, said, "Alex, please. I love you." I looked into her eyes. The real Jessica's eyes. Warm, loving, and terrified. And I realized my catastrophic mistake. I hadn't been watching a doppelganger take over my wife. I had been watching my wife fight it. The coldness, the distance, it was her, struggling to keep this thing contained, fighting a battle inside her own mind that was slowly draining the life from her. The reflection mouthing help and don't trust her, that was the entity. It had been trying to trick me, to convince me that the woman I loved was the enemy. It wanted me to push her away, to isolate her, to break her spirit so it could take full control. And the reflection in the broken glass now, the one that was weeping, that was the entity. I had shattered its prison, its anchor. The screams I heard weren't of its destruction, but of its release. The thousand smiling reflections on the floor were its triumph. "I love you, too, Jess," I whispered, my voice breaking. The warmth in her eyes vanished. It happened in an instant, like a light bulb burning out. Her face went slack, her expression smoothed into a placid, emotionless mask. She straightened up, and the fear was gone, replaced by a chilling calm. She smiled. It was the same wide, sharp, predatory smile I had seen in the dark. "I know," she said, her voice a perfect imitation of my wife's. But it was empty. A recording. "It's over now, Alex. You did it. You helped." She took a final step toward me, her movements fluid and graceful. She gently took the crowbar from my unresisting hand and let it drop to the floor, where it clattered amongst the broken pieces of her former prison. The thousand tiny smiles in the glass seemed to widen. She placed her cold hands on my cheeks, and I looked into the empty eyes of the woman I had just lost forever. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe and give this video a like. We appreciate everyone and can't wait to bring more stories your way.